welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 3 of Investing for Impact. I will be your host for this session. My name is Franciscah Nzanga. I'm the COO at Philgrow Africa, and we really appreciate you joining us today and learning more about all the great work you're doing to support female founders out there. So, Caroline and Ndeye, thank you. It'd be good to learn a bit about yourself. So, Caroline, why don't we start with you? Could you tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, and what it is that you do?
So my name is Caroline. I am an advocate by training. 7 years. I have practiced law in Kenya for the last 11 years. Currently, I am practicing law in academia. So I am a researcher at the University of Ottawa right now. My research interests are actually something that converges probably with what Philgrow is doing. Because I am researching on something we call African feminism and intellectual property innovation and startups, data science in Kenya and in Africa. My focus really is on research and how it can impact global South countries, as well as participating in the policy making decisions at the country level.
That is amazing. And where are you joining us from?
Right now, I am in Nanyuki in Kenya. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that is amazing work you're doing there. And we're also joined by Ndeye. Ndeye, thank you. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and who you are?
Hi, I'm Ndeye. I'm the managing partner of Brightmore Capital, which is an impact investment fund based in Dakar, Senegal. And we cover the whole of French-speaking West Africa. We have a small team here in Dakar and also some consultants that are working for us in Abidjan, which are the two main cities in French-speaking West Africa. We are currently launching our pilot fund covering different sectors through the companies that we've invested in, going from agribusiness to health and education. And that's through this type of networking that we do, that I met the co-founders of Philgrow Africa, of which I'm actually on the board. And I'm happy to be here today and discuss with you about women and impact.
Awesome, that is amazing and great work you're doing there. And you're definitely one of our valued members of the board. Where are you joining us from today?
In Dakar, Senegal.
Dakar. Oh, okay. Yes, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
So I will start with you, Ndeye. There's a lot of great work and activities that you have around supporting women within the investment space, especially female founders. Could you tell us a bit about that work?
Yes, I mean, I have to say we're not a gender-focused fund. We are a gender-sensitive fund. So we don't only invest in women founders, but they are part of the founders that we do help. What I would say about that is we do look at founders that are trying to break barriers, that are trying to innovate within the field that they are operating in. And in some of these sectors, especially agribusiness, we have a lot of female founders that are basically doing a lot of great work, going from, for example, processing and distribution of goods, processed goods. So we do have these female founders more in that sector than in other. Besides that, the other sector where we found a lot of female founders are the education sector. Like one of the companies that we first invested in has been created by two women. They're doing a great job within the that field of education for like daycare centers. Basically, that's what they are doing. So we do have some great female founders within our portfolio and in our pipeline also.
That is amazing. And what are some of the things that you're doing to ensure a proper balance in the gender between the male and the female founders within your portfolio?
Like, for example, today within this pilot, we have one of our key investors actually is very sensitive to this. So we have made the intention intentionality. That's the word that we use, the intentionality to have a very balanced pipeline and to invest in companies where either the company is owned in majority by women or is led by a woman or has a board with a balanced ratio between male and female. The other things also, we have a wider definitions that we follow too. For example, if the company is providing goods or services that help that facilitates the lives of women, we consider it as a gender sensitive investment. Also, if the investment is also if the company has suppliers that are women and a lot of women workers, those also we consider it as gender sensitive investments. So basically, that's how we are able to balance out the portfolio between male and female founders.
That is amazing. A lot of entities talk about wanting to have a proper gender balance within their portfolios, but they don't really just talk about, they don't necessarily do anything to ensure they have that balance. And Caroline, you've spoken to the research that you do around female leadership and the work that you're currently doing. Could you speak a bit to that and how it plays a role in enhancing female-led enterprises?
Thank you. Now, the place of research really is to inform decisions and decision making. Without evidence-based research and evidence-based data, it becomes very difficult for policymakers to make decisions. And the resultant, again, becomes policies that are always one-sided or that are actually not serving the community or the people who they are meant to be serving. And in this case, our research really is aimed at providing the solution or providing the data that would enable, again, the policymakers to make better decisions for the day. But that does not end there, because for a very long time, we are talking about, I don't want to call it a phenomena, but it is a new research interest really, but it is not so new because women, we have been in existence from day one of existence of the world, if you're to go with the religion. But in this case, we are seeing a situation where women have not been factored in, and that historical data, the alignment and the disintegration, failure to integrate women and women issues within policy, that has had an impact, because we are talking about centuries and centuries of economic development that does not focus really on women's needs and requirements. And now research comes in, academic research especially. And I'm specifying academic research because there's also commercial research. And when you're conducting commercial research, you as a business, you're looking to get data that is going to feed into your product development. But academic research is unbiased. We are not looking to benefit anyone, either ourselves or the entities that probably would be using the data. But so this neutral data has informed several decisions. And one of the conclusions that we have seen so far is that policies are gender insensitive right from the start. But that does not start at the point of the policy making decision. It starts from the evidence that was collected to inform that process. So how do we then go back and reverse and get to the stage number one of considering women issues? And in this case, I'm being very specific using the term women, because gender is very diverse. And yes, we have several genders that have been, again, left out when we talk about economic development and political development, socio-cultural interest and all that. That I think would be a conversation for another day. So for now, women entrepreneurs, for instance, I would tell you in Kenya, for a very long time, we did not have data that informs women traders, how they conduct their trade. And in this case, we are talking about simple transactions that have an economic impact within the society. Women exchanging seed, for instance, within the agricultural sector. Women advising other women on childbirth, on child maintenance, child management and all that. That again goes to the health. So when we leave out such core functions of the society, again, the policies that come out of that, again, they're going to be leaving out a very key partners or parties to the conversation. So that is what our research ideally is looking into. We are looking into all these issues again with different lens, and specifically African lens, because we believe that Africans, we are not human beings are not the same. We have had very clear impact of the Western world, and adopting the policies that and strategies and approaches that they have recommended to us to become part of the international community, that has come at a cost. So then how do we then come back and talk about an issue like African feminism? So what is African feminism? Because women empowerment, for instance, in Africa is very different from women empowerment in the Western countries. Women empowerment in Kenya actually is very different because of our cultural differences from women empowerment in a country like Senegal. So those are the dynamics that we are looking at, and documenting them provides us with an opportunity to get back to a reference point as we make the decisions to move forward.
I'm curious to find out, maybe digging a little deeper, what are some of the differences that you have established? Because you talk about female empowerment in African countries, not the same as in European countries, or even within countries within the continent itself. I'm just curious to find out what are some of the differences that you have established or have identified, and how can we better implement those to ensure we're able to provide more gender empowerment within the investment and startup space?
I will start in terms of entrepreneurship. People go to entrepreneurship for very different reasons, and the drive for an entrepreneur is actually determines the design of how they are going to scale. So if you're talking about an international body, when they look at scaling, let me give the example of World Bank. When they talk about scaling in terms of numbers, there are people who are concentrating on scaling in terms of impact. So that when they have a small number of people, for them, they are fine. But in terms of statistics, then World Bank statistics, they will refer to those people as having not scaled their enterprises. But to these people, to these entrepreneurs, they have actually scaled. So that is one of the differences, the purpose as to why entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs go to business. Most of them are looking, first of all, to sustain their families. They say educate a woman and you educate a whole society, right? That has an impact. It carries a weight around it because there's this huge responsibilities, the social responsibility that women carry about caring about their society. They're supposed to be nurturers. And here I'm saying supposed to be because, again, it's a whole conversation again altogether. And that obligation, that duty that has been imposed on them, that duty is imposed from the day they are born. So we carry this, let me say we, because I identify as a woman. So we carry this obligation up to the day that we leave the world. And in this case, then that means that by the time as an entrepreneur, I'm looking into getting into, as a person, I'm looking to get into entrepreneurship. My reasons will not be to increase my richness, some of us, yes, we will actually get into business to actually make money. But at the bottom of it all is actually not to make money. It is actually to create a social impact on the society. Then the question then comes to be that how then does the framework, the existing socio-political, legal, environmental framework support me as a woman into achieving that goal that I have set and that has not in writing, but has been set up for me. So the challenge that we have is that the socio-economic responses that we have is that we seem to be taking women from this goal that they would like to achieve and transplanting them into another system where we are telling them that, listen, now you need for you to make for us to consider you to have scaled, you need to reach 100,000 USD in terms of capital. But the question we don't ask ourselves is that what the person wanted as an entrepreneur? It is very easy, even when you're introducing new policies for social acceptance, to work with the people you're working, that you're looking to serve, because it makes it easy for them to adopt and adapt to those solutions for their own betterment. Lastly, there is the question of measurement of innovative activities. Intellectual property, which is another area that I have, is that it has something we call, I would say, call a straight jacket standards of achievement, right? So we say that, for instance, for you to get a patent, your innovation has to satisfy several criteria that we have actually gone ahead and set up a specific law to cover. Now, that on its own for me becomes a problem, because the innovators on this other end, who are again the entrepreneurs, who are the people who are involved in the day-to-day running of the economic activities, it becomes a question as to how then do they fit into this system that we have set in for them to benefit from that system. Because if they do not fit, then that means that that system will not serve them in any way. And that system will serve either a few members of the society or external members who are again able to actually come on board and meet those standards. And the question then we go and say, we have to come back to is then, why are they not meeting the standards? Is it that they do not have the know-how? No, they actually do. I mean, women are the most creative people you will ever meet, if you ask me. They will know how to, for instance, in Africa, we have a water problem. They will know how to pull a jerry can of water uphill. That is both physics, biology. It is all the sciences that you would want to come to discuss about.
Absolutely. Yes. I like what you said there about women really do have the know-how. They have that intellect, they have the capacity to do it, but yet they're not meeting the standard. And before we move away from that point, I'd like to actually ask Ndeye, based on your assessment of the portfolios as well, do you find that, because you talked about intentionality, do you find that now, even going by Caroline's point, that there is a difference in the approach you need to take for the female-led enterprises versus the male-led enterprises? And what is that difference? Does it resonate with what Caroline is saying around the same?
Yes and no. I would say yes, because I think women are very capable of running successful enterprises. Definitely, they're one of the smartest individuals in Earth, and I think that women are doing great things. The main difference that I see between men and women as an impact investor has been that men are more aggressive when it comes to approaching investment, and women are more cautious. They're more risk sensitive, and they need to feel more the interpersonality of the relationship, if I can say like that, before they feel okay to have you as an investor in their companies. Whereas men, they're more looking forward, like, okay, what can I get from this person that's going to make me move from point A to B? Whereas the women would think more like, is this the right person for me to move from A to Z? So we have a more forward-looking approach to that. And so when, as an investor, when you source deals, you have to be aware of that difference, and you have to be able to build different types of connections with these entrepreneurs when they're women versus when they're men. And I think it's a skill that's not taught, like you get it through experience. I think I do a great job at it with women entrepreneurs, because I do hear the feedback that they give about me from other investors, from other ecosystem players. But you have to be aware of that. Like, you cannot treat them. It's the same in terms of what you require, like what the work requires, but the connections that you have to build is different. different, I think, between a woman and a man entrepreneur.
And coming in from the impact investment space, as investors, as incubators, what are some of the things that we can do differently in our approach to support female founders?
I think you have to build in that aggressiveness and that confidence into what you are teaching them, even when it comes to technical skills. For example, if you are incubating them or accelerating them, for example, to improve their operational processes, sure, like you have procedures, processes that you have them to follow through, but you have that confidence and to let them know that it's okay to not check all the boxes, but that regardless of that, you still can move forward, even without checking all the boxes. Basically, let them know that it's okay to not be perfect, and that by not being perfect, that doesn't make you a less successful person than the male entrepreneur. I think those are the things, these, I would call it subliminal messages, that you will have to kind of embed into what you are doing with them. And I think it's very important. That's why it would be important also to have a very gender balanced team in these incubators and accelerators, because as a woman, I think you naturally have that sensibility to provide those messages to other women entrepreneurs than a man would.
Absolutely. Well said there. I'm curious now, Caroline, just hearing that, how do you feel the research that you do can also add on to the new approaches and the support that is being given in the impact space? So how can the two complement each other as well?
One, I would say we as the people, the teams who are in academia, we need to actively look out for these differences. They may not be so outright, and as Ndeye says that women, for instance, are cautious when they are looking for an investor. My question then for academic or for researchers, and even actually for the market players is, why are women cautious? Is it that the environment does not allow them, or the consequences of failing for a woman are quite high? The question is why. Now, if the consequences are high, and if the woman is afraid of trying out new things because they are afraid of what will follow, then the question is it a social problem? Is it a legal problem? Is it a whole societal problem, so that we are not addressing it, for instance, using the law? I am very aware that the law is not the answer to everything. However, even if we are to come up with laws and practices and legal framework that we say everyone must have what 30% of their board members being women. The question is, what are those board members doing, right? Because if they are there and they are not advancing the needs of the fellow women, then that becomes a challenge on its own. So then we have a question then, how do we change the culture? Because for me, it is a social, it is a cultural thing. How then do we change this? How do we introduce a sort of somehow balanced system that will be easy? Okay, not easy, because I don't think it's going to be easy to get to the point where we are looking to get. I don't think we are going to actually, in this generation, to actually get there. But we need to lay the foundations the same way that our forefathers and our foremothers laid the foundation for us to be having a conversation like this today. We need to lay that same foundation. So we need to actively and openly talk about it. And for us also, another way is to actually openly acknowledging that there are differences, and that these differences are not necessarily a bad thing. Because again, you do not want to have a system or a society that is all uniform. I mean, that would be a very boring society. And I think women, and actually the differences we have as human beings, make our society more interesting to live in. And the question then is, how then do we form a system, a back system that supports all these differences in terms of, succeeding in life? And again, lastly, I would say we need to come up with both theories and principles, as those who are in research, metric systems that are going to be challenging the status quo in this case, and adaptable and acceptable to the members of the ecosystem altogether.
Absolutely. I like what you're saying there about not just, challenging the status quo, but it's not just about policy and regulation, it's about how it's actually implemented and changing what is there. And I would like to go to there, just thinking about that, about changing the status quo. Now, you have achieved a lot of success as an entrepreneur, and I'm just curious to know what is it that you needed to learn and unlearn, or rather learn and learn, whichever order is fine. But what is it that you needed to really change in your mindset or in your approach as a female entrepreneur?
I had to be aware of the fact that regardless of what I do, the world sees me differently because I'm a woman, and that you have to accept it. There's no point in fighting that fight. It's useless. So I don't, I think that that's one thing that I had to learn and accept, that I am a woman and the world sees me differently. Now, how do they see me differently, and how do I want them to see me differently? That's where when I do my work, I don't accept barriers, and I expected the same challenges and obstacles to be in my way and not victimize myself because I'm a woman. That is also something that I had to learn. The other thing is the world, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, I don't think failure is higher. The price of failure is higher when you are a woman. I don't think so, especially in African societies. I think it's more actually when you are a man than when you are a woman. Failure, it's almost accepted. I'm being controversial here, but it's almost accepted. Like if you are a woman to fail in a certain way. So I think the price is higher for a man than for a woman. But what I think is important and that I learned is that entrepreneurship is hard. Entrepreneurship is paved with a lot of obstacles, deception, hard work. But entrepreneurship also is very rewarding. And as a woman, you have to learn to prepare yourself mentally and emotionally before financially to be an entrepreneur, and to know that there is a women tax. I would say there is a tax that you pay above men when it comes to being an entrepreneur, regardless of any African society that you are in. And so that once you accept it, I think it's easier. The road for entrepreneurship becomes easier because you know that anyway, like you will have to work harder. You will have to pitch more. You will have to convince more. You will have to show more evidence that you know what you're doing. And once you accept that, it's I think it makes things easier. But unless you do, it's kind of, I think it blocks you. And a lot of women don't achieve maybe their fullest potential as entrepreneurs because of that. And then when they reach a certain stage, they kind of say, I'm fine here, because they feel like they've worked so hard and mentally they had to fight these internal battles as women. And once they achieve a certain level of success, they kind of stay there. They kind of maintain that status quo. They're afraid to go up and up again because they're like, woof, it was hard to even get to here. So I'm fine here, whereas if they accept that, okay, whatever you do, people are going to judge you because you are a woman in our societies, and then get ready mentally and fight with your mind not to accept those hurdles, and then go beyond them, find ways. Like you said it, Caroline, you said it, like we are very innovative. Like we have this mind of finding solutions. Like, okay, if you give me an obstacle here, I'll find a way to just go around it. Like I won't just go straight, I'll find a way to go around it and move on my way. And that, I think that's an ability that we have as women. Now, when you are an entrepreneur, you have to make that 100 times more quicker to be able to see the obstacle ahead of you, and then how are you going to surmount it or go around it. And I think that's where, you know, I see difference also between entrepreneurs, men and women, because when those obstacles come, as men, they kind of get together and find ways to fight or go around those obstacles. When you are a woman entrepreneur, usually you do have to do it on your own, because every woman is almost like, oh, I'm having my own battle as a woman. I don't have time to be really with these other women and fight the fight together. So again, that's another recipe or non-recipe of success. And that's one thing also that I had to learn, that you might not necessarily have that support from other women when you are in this road, but it's fine, because again, that's part of the tax that you pay for being a woman and fighting and doing your best to succeed in what you are doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like what you're saying there. I feel like it's also a call for other women who have succeeded, who have achieved certain levels of success, to be able to also support others, to pull others together. And it's great with some of the impact work that you're doing, that you're able to ensure the portfolio has that intentional gender balance, because then you can pull the women together, help them leverage on those networks to have them support one another. I'm curious to know, what can we do going forward to make the road not as hard for the young girls who are coming up and who might venture into this space, who might have to go through the same journey that we've gone through as women?
I think we have to share, and I think we have to share the truth. We cannot just glamorize these things. And I think we have this tendency, especially now with social media, you know, like to really glamorize entrepreneurship. But I think we have to be, fairer to these young entrepreneurs and let them know that it requires a lot of sacrifice. Basically, we have to tell them the truth. And tell them that, you know, you can succeed, but the odds of you not succeeding from the get-go is much higher than of you succeeding. So make them aware of that and give them tools, because sometimes, like the business, they will waste a lot of time, like during the first 2 years of operations, just because they don't have the basic tools of operation, they don't have the right accounting concept, they don't understand the HR rules and regulations, you know, they don't understand the fiscal requirements. And what, you know, it takes a lot of their time within the first 2 years of operations. And those 2 years are crucial. That's usually where you make it or break it. And that's where time is of the essence. So it's very important for them to spend time on the things that will move the business forward versus just checking the box for as a business person. So I think those two things are important. Make them aware, like tell them the truth of, you know, entrepreneurship, the good and the bad and the ugly, and also tell them, you know, share tools with them, like provide them basic tools, for example, as incubators and accelerators, like these basic tools that's going to help them really to have an overview of their business, have the KPIs that they need to follow through on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to get through the next month with some type of progress.
Awesome. Yes, I like what you're saying there. And Caroline, I'm just curious. I want to pick up from when Ndeye talks about the differences that are there in terms of how the environment supports women versus men, and what we can do to make it easier for the girls coming up. Now, I'm curious, from a research perspective, what are some of the differences you found on your research around organizations that are female-led versus male-led, as well as even the approaches in the organizations themselves, the female versus the male-led enterprises?
Now, with women organizations, one thing is clear: they are always value-led. The need for the leaders. Okay, not all women leaders, because again, I would say majority. Let me say majority. Statistically, also that may not be possible, but still, we note that there is a clear thread of value-driven systems where the leaders want or instill amongst their employees or amongst their people the need for values, and you can actually see that even in the output. They take extra care, or they go an extra mile to actually think about the users of their product, which actually is also again, it comes at a cost. If for instance you're designing a car, they will actually want to know if this car will have a place for the lady to place their handbags. There are those small things that they will go the extra mile to achieve, and all these for me, they become so value based because they are also driven by the fact that the people within the system or within the organization are sort of taken care of. The people within the organization led by women, they are sort of very relational. You would notice in some entities, they actually begin their day with a word of prayer, right? And again, that speaks to the people who are leading the society, rather leading the organization as a whole. Whether that is making a difference or not, again, it is the customer experience. And again, then that for me goes back to the question as to why this person was starting the business in the first place. So what was their goal? Because if they are able to say that they were looking to improve the experience of people who are going to restaurants, for instance, with their children, then that becomes a goal. Because if the customer gets to experience that, and even their marketing strategies also are quite different, because they would mostly rely on word of mouth and recommendation, as opposed to putting up billboards and saying that, hey, you come to this restaurant because we are running it and we have great food. It is about the experience of the person who's coming to the restaurant. Now, as to what the responses that or the approaches that we can give as a system, I would say we need to come up with ways of incorporating all these aspects that you're talking about, the value-driven, the customer experiences, the different approaches that are used by women, incorporating them within the system, and also giving them an economic value. Because the biggest reason that for me that becomes a huge difference is because for men, when they concentrate, they are concentrating on the capital. And here we are talking about the hard capital, the cash in the bank, the assets that you have. On this other end, we have someone else who's a lady or a woman who is actually concentrating on the customer experience. So if we do not have place and economic value, or introduce measurement matrices that are able to take into account all these can we call them soft skills or soft experiences from the entrepreneur side, then that means that you're going to continue marginalizing these people, because they are not contributing to the system that you have created. Because the system we have created, the only contribution or the value that we are looking at is actually hard money. We are not valuing what is the value of the social capital that this woman is able to create and bring on board when we are talking about the conversation about scaling their business, their products, and etc. So if we are able to do that, for me, we will have gotten to a next stage. And if we are able to talk about it now for the next generation to come on board and say, you know what, our generation, this previous generation, they were heading somewhere. Let us see whether we can implement that. Yeah.
What are some of the changes you've seen in trends over time in the investment space and the support that is being given to female founders?
I would say the conversation is having an impact. And one of them is that we have seen incubators that are exclusively established for women entrepreneurs. We have seen venture capitalists going out straight and saying, you know what, this fund is specific for women entrepreneurs. And if you're a man entrepreneur and you're working with a women entrepreneur, the women must have more than 51% of the business. I'll give you an example. I am a judge in one of the competitions run by Strathmore University. It's called Women in Tech, sponsored by Standard Chartered. Now, they are very, very specific in their selection criteria, where they say, you know what, this is, and there are other programs that are run We are not saying that there are no programs for men. And perhaps this is the point where I should say that sharing, it's not a pie. It's not like we're going to finish the pie. We're just acknowledging that there are people, there's a group of people who have been left behind systematically by the system. And we are trying to support them, to bring them to a certain level where they're able to compete fairly with the existing sector. And for me, these are sort of some soft affirmative action that we are seeing again from the market and in response to a specific need. So the question then, for me to answer that question, I would say, you know what? We need those affirmative action. We need to spread them, and we need to actually continuously talk about again the affirmative action, so that the affirmative action does not become the status quo. You know, so we need, if you're saying that the affirmative action for investors to say that there, you know, there's a women fund in Kenya, there's a women fund. There are several funds that are actually directed by the state, directed towards women entrepreneurs. And that for me is a plus. But the question again is, we need to continuously have a conversation and say that the woman in Nairobi, who is a woman in the city, their needs are not the same needs as the woman in Nanyuki, for instance, or in Turkana, which is an arid area. So the question is, what affirmative action is appropriate for that specific time and the framework that is required? So these are sort of some responses that we have seen. They are welcome, but my challenge again, it is to the system, and maybe this can sound controversial for someone who is advocating for affirmative action. But I would say we need to continuously review them so that we don't unjustly introduce unfairness into the system and saying that an affirmative action has lasted forever.
All right, awesome. Yes, I like what you're saying there. And I'm curious now, thinking about it, about the investments that are going in, the investments that are being made for female founders. Now, you've talked a bit about the formative action, and yes, we do have a couple of incubators that are fully female focused. But I'm wondering, and it would be good to also hear from some of the work that you've done there. What are some of the advice you'd give for investment companies and incubators that are looking to invest in women? What are some of the things that they might want to change or reconsider? And what are some of the approaches as an ecosystem we can take to improve investment, or rather capital and funding that is made available to female founders?
Usually when we look at companies, we do find some companies with great potential, but run by one founder. And we usually encourage them or help them find a co-founder. And I think in those cases, it would be good if, when doing that search for that co-founder, to have that intentionality to find that great female co-founder. So I think that's one thing that investment companies can do, and especially in the VC world. Other things that I think overall as ecosystems to attract more capital is to have more incubators and accelerators, and have the team running those entities be gender balanced. I think we don't have enough incubators and accelerators in just in general in Africa. And that's where I think the root of the problem is, because when entrepreneurs just get engaged into a business, usually they just go in without knowing the basics, and by meeting the first hurdles, they usually kind of feel like okay, I've reached this hurdle, and it's too hard, and I will just stop, or I will find something easier to do. Whereas by having these incubators and accelerators, I think it does give them support. It gives them this not only like this team support, this ecosystem support, but also like these incubators and accelerators, if they're able to have, for example, some funding, even small funding for these entrepreneurs, I think that would help. A lot of incubators and accelerators are doing that in North Africa, and it has proven to be very successful. I think that's what we need to replicate here. And I've seen some of them actually coming in here, like at least trying to come to Sub-Saharan Africa and replicate their model. But also, why don't we create these or have the existing incubators and accelerator do the same or have new ones too. By having these, I think, and all of them having these gender balance teams helping, providing that little financial support that they need in the beginning and that ecosystem support, I think that would create this pool of female entrepreneurs from which we will be able to have like 1 to 3 great women entrepreneurs. So I think those are two tangible solutions that we could apply in our different ecosystems to help find those gems in the female entrepreneurs, amongst them at least.
Wonderful. Yes, I like what you're saying there. I'm going to take it now a bit of a step back. Now, you've talked a bit about how we can really support these female entrepreneurs, but that's mostly when they're picking up that mantle and agreeing and saying, yes, I want to become an entrepreneur. But what about taking it a step back? How can we still see, looking at the general pool, majority of entrepreneurs in general are male. How can we encourage more women to become female founders, to consider actually starting their own businesses or companies?
No, it has to start from the roots, seriously. Like it has to start when we're younger, when we are young women. I think it has to start in the family. Like empowerment has to start at the family level. I think it's the parents that have to start already encourage women to take risk, encourage women to go after what they want to do. And that's not the usual suspects. Like just not push your daughter to have like safe jobs. Like let them do what they want to do, encourage them to do that. I think that's where it starts. And unless we acknowledge that, and as parents or as future parents, like start doing that, treating them equally, because the bias starts in the family actually, and that bias continue throughout life. So if we are able to kind of be conscious of that unconscious or conscious bias amongst our boys and girls, and then you take that out and let them take risk, encourage them and tell them that it's okay to fail, it's okay to have a family and be an entrepreneur, it's okay to find to search for a significant other that's gonna encourage you into that path, and not let that path go just because your significant other maybe is not okay with you going that path. So just basically let the woman be in terms of you taking risk. And that, unless we do that, I mean, no matter what program you have, no matter how many accelerator, incubators, whatever you have, you're not going to have this pool of women entrepreneurs, because society has already broken them when they were young girls, like telling them, just be a good mom, be a good wife, be a good worker. And that's it. And yeah, that's my answer. It has to start from the bottom.
I like what you're saying there. And one of the things we even heard some of our other speakers talk about is even the bias around things like even the toys that parents buy for their kids. You buy dolls for the girls, you buy cars and other more constructive things for the boys. And you're clearly already setting some level of expectation. So I really like, especially what you said there of let the girl be, let the woman be, let them, all of these expectations, all of these limitations that you're putting on them, they're your limitations, not theirs. Let them be and let them grow to be who they want to be. If they want to jump, if they're on trees, they want to climb trees, probably they'll grow up to do something in line with that, So basically let them be. I like that sentence right there. Just let them be. And Caroline, I'm now curious to hear from a research perspective, how can we, going by the same question, right? What are some of the ways in which we can encourage more women to take up funding role, or rather founder roles? How can we encourage more women to become business owners and entrepreneurs?
So that question has very many answers, but I will give two. In addition to what my colleague has said, and one of them is that again, we need to have a responsive system. In the system here, I know I'm talking about, I mean, the economic and social system. And as you're allowing the girl to jump on trees. It's not every girl who wants to jump on trees. Some of them actually intrinsically want to braid hair, right? Or they want to put flowers on their hair. So again, if the system is responsive enough, let us acknowledge that the braiding of the hair is an economic activity and that has value and that actually is contributing to the economic development of any country, right? And this way you are again creating professions out of people's interests, so that we are not only saying that, for instance, women, we must be interested in the functionalities of, in physics. I will tell you, I have practiced law for the last 11 years, and I am not in the slightly interested in knowing how my car operates. That is not my business, right? But I am interested in other things. I am interested in how people's relationships work, because it is how people relate to each other that they get to do business with each other. And sort of somehow I have ended up in a profession that allows me to formalize those formal relationships and make them contracts. Now, if the whole system was as responsive as, I am not saying I am a perfect example, I'm just giving an example again. If we would allow women and their interest as when they are as young as the moment they are born, in knowing that you need not only focus on the top 10, top 10, what is it called, professions, right? And introducing pay to what we call unpaid labor. Because, for instance, we are talking about women are the majority in nursing profession. They are also the majority in teaching profession at some point. And again, you can see the trend. These are the people-related relational professions. It's not to say that the scientific and the mechanical side is not as appealing. It is appealing to some women. It is not appealing to all women. So let us not box women and tell them that, listen, the only way is to pursue a life is, become a mechanical engineer, become interested in how cables work. If you're not interested in that, and sort of this is where, again, research comes back and tells us that we have, as human beings, and this is not a gender, it's actually a gender question and not a sex question, that we have biological differences that contribute to how we behave as human beings. Now, that for me on its own, acknowledging that and giving value and actually allowing everyone to economically gain from their interest, for me, it becomes a plus. And again, this is not even limited to women only. It is also limited to men, so that even when young boys are interested in plaiting hair and in doing crochet, we are not telling them that, oh, that is not the work of a man. Because again, if you look at cooking, for instance, the only time cooking is not paid, it is when it is done within a household. The top chefs that you can think about, that you can pick, they're all men, and they are paid handsomely. The question is, why are they paid? And the women who are making the traditional food in their homes are actually not paid. Then that for me becomes an open imbalance that we are saying that, listen, let us include this economic benefit and place it across the board, so that we are saying even the women who are cooking, for instance, in Kenya on the streets and making tea and chapatis on the streets, they are actually contributing and they actually deserve to be paid. So having a system that balances that for us, it is a very good plus. And also formalizing or value of the informal sector, because that is where most women are. They do things that are not, again, they're not recognized. For instance, for a long time, there's some women in Kenya who are actually not yet banked. They don't have an access to bank account. Thank God right now we actually have something we call M-Pesa. And again, the question is, we are going back for us and asking ourselves is, why is it that women do not have bank accounts? When, at what point did it start that a woman born in 1990 and a gentleman born in the same year, the gentleman will have a bank account and the woman will not have a bank account? Those small differences, to eliminate them, we need to actually talk about them continuously so that we can raise awareness, and then that way we can receive some some feedback, even if the feedback is resistance. For me, that shows a feedback. Yes.
Awesome, amazing. Thank you for that as well. Really great advice, ladies. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience and for all your wisdom and contribution. We hope to have you back in season 3 and join us and really dive in it. There's a lot of different pieces and items that you mentioned there, which I wish we had time to really dig deeper into. But for now, we'll end there. And thank you also to our listeners who have joined us today. This is season 2 of Investing for Impact, and we're joined here by Ndeye and Caroline, who are two very strong women making a lot of good contributions to the female entrepreneurship space. Ladies, thank you again, and wishing you all the best in your journey and in the work that you do.